everybody. Welcome to On the Patio. I'm Dean, and today we're in Napa, California, in the home of none other than Gerald Casale. You might know Gerald from many of his efforts in the band Devo, a founding member, the bass player, one of the main lyricists, if not the main lyricist, but this band's been in the game for almost 50 years, if not more, entertaining, touring, playing, commiserating, growing old, and some vintage youth, as we would call it. But he's also a vintner, has his own label, 50 by 50, which is named after the dimensions of the house, which is not this house, of course. It's a very iconic home that Mr. Casale has renovated painstakingly recently, but the 50-50 flavor is something you certainly should investigate and enjoy. But before we get to it, I just wanted to tell everyone who's watching and listening that this man pioneered something that a lot of people don't understand just listening or consuming the music of Devo. Devo came about through a lot of his own trials and tribulations personally, and we're going to get into that. But I wanted to say, Gerald, thank you very much for having us in your home today, for taking the time to let us take a journey with you where you've been, coming from Akron, Ohio, and now you're here in California being a music, food, and wine aficionado, getting introduced to the fine things that you've worked very hard for.
That's true. I'm like a cartoon character, like in a Bugs Bunny or Roadrunner or Goofy or Porky Pig, where they all have the same scene where you're running or you're being chased, and there's a bridge. It's one of those bridges that's just ropes and slats that you run on, and it starts to unravel as you run. So just behind you, the bridge is falling, and it's 2,000 feet down, and you got to keep moving because you're just staying ahead of certain disaster. And I'm fortunate enough to right now to be that one or two steps ahead of certain disaster.
Well, and that brings me to a point of this story and your journey of you and the rest of the band, the Mother's Laws, and you and your family being from Ohio, being fine art students at Kent State.
Right.
And that unfortunate event, May 4th of 1970, where 4 people were shot and killed, 2 of which Mr. Casale was friends with and was near at the time of this.
That's right.
It was an unfortunate event, something that people of my age and younger won't remember or recall because this was 1970. Though this event was a catalyst for someone sitting next to me that was, if you will, a self-proclaimed hippie at the time.
Yeah, more or less. I didn't think of myself that way, but in retrospect, I was.
Yes.
Because hippies weren't very political. They were, into visions and flights of fancy. And of course, as good as the pot got, you were looking for that, and acid when it was new and real. And it was more about living in your head and living for ideals that were unrealistic. And I think I was doing a good amount of that. And May 4th certainly was like the fork in the road, the proverbial red pill.
Yes.
That changed everything, where you start getting real and you start questioning the brand that is America and the myth of us being good guys and, freedom-loving people, democracy, liberty. It just all just came crashing down in my face and all my peers' faces about what was really going on and what a nasty game it was, and just how power trumps everything. Unfortunately, you used the word Trump, but yes, it changed me, and it was almost like no more Mr. Nice Guy, to quote Alice Cooper. And I think that led directly to a kind of a politicized and confrontational dimension to my art and my pursuit of music.
And that is pretty much the gamut, if you will, from what I understand. And growing up as a young man, we didn't have a concept of that turmoil and that division, even almost, 50 some odd years ago.
Yeah. Well, it's easily forgotten.
Yes.
And of course, that is how history is written by the victors. Our side lost, to be quite honest. So the things we were angry about and upset about and fighting about got buried, but doesn't mean they weren't totally valid and totally primal, because it just kept happening again.
Yes.
And again. And now here we are again, right now in the present day, and it's just like what we were facing in 1970, except in a way for me, and possibly because of my age, I don't know, it's worse. Because then there was a large segment of the population that was well educated by the public school system, which had not been undermined and sabotaged and decimated by right-wing politics, where it was defunded and people were dumbed down and public education was no good. So the only people that were getting a good education were the privileged.
Yes.
Which is what they wanted. So there were massive protests back then against this assault on the democratic guardrails with the three branches of government and the safeguards we had with that, and the way government worked and the rules and the Constitution. And everybody knew it. And that's why they were out there in mass, losing it when Nixon expanded the war into Cambodia from Vietnam without an act of Congress. Today, what's happening is nobody even was educated about the principles that supposedly created the country and the freedoms that we supposedly enjoy. So they don't get why anybody should even be upset, because they're just passive, like sheep, accepting this assault from people that hate liberty and are anti-democratic. And that's what's going on now. So it's even more depressing.
Yes.
Because you don't see this mass awareness of how wrong what's going on is.
And that's that herd mentality that
Right.
everyone is subscribing to.
Right.
And if anyone has followed Devo long enough, it's not just the pop electronic culture, the rock and roll, if you will. There is a hardcore, if you will, undertow of
Right.
where Devo came from, and that was the de-evolution of society.
Right.
And that is the pivot, the GPS waypoint of what this man and others, Mark went through as well, and others went through at Kent State,
Right.
that really had an impact of where this music, if you will, there was a pivot, I'll use that word, of where music got politicized to a certain degree. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, we were never just about style. That was important to Devo, that we were about substance and we weren't married to a style. Although we had an MO and we had an aesthetic visually.
Yes.
And that was all conscious and part and parcel to Devo's reason for being. We were multimedia on purpose, and I was spearheading that video end of it through my association with Chuck Statler, who was my good friend at Kent State. He was a little older than me. He owned a camera, and we both were film buffs, and he was able to shoot things. So
Right.
I was working with him. And I didn't even know I was a director yet. That's what my function was, but I didn't have the word for it. Didn't know the definition of it. But Devo wouldn't have existed without this conscious goal, this manifesto of this is what we're going to do. And, it got lost, I think, once we got accepted on some level by the media in the record business because they like to trivialize and reduce you down to something that can be labeled with one or two words.
Yes.
So we became new wave. And, any messages we were putting out got buried. They're there if anybody wants to watch the video, Freedom of Choice.
Right.
They're there. Freedom of choice is what you got. Freedom from choice is what you want. We were commenting on the duality of human nature and the failure of what we see as the devolution of human consciousness, which we now think is rather complete compared to what we were warning about and wanted to be wrong about. What we have now is beyond our worst fears.
If you could have forecasted or put some sort of crystal ball on the map 40 years ago, even before Whippet came out, even when you did the short film that sent another pivot, The Truth About De-Evolution,
Right.
and that was the catalyst where David Bowie
Yes.
was caught off guard and put you and the band on the escalator to Warner Brothers.
Yes. Again, that came through Iggy Pop.
Yes.
And Iggy Pop was connected with Tony Basil and Dean Stockwell.
Yes.
So it's all this fortuitous, it's a small world,
Yes.
fortuitous connections. And so Iggy was talking to David, and David then put me in contact with Stan Diamond, who was his lawyer in LA, and it started the ball rolling for David to produce our record. But he had seen the 10-minute film because of Iggy Pop
Yes.
and Tony Basil. And and there it was. There was de-evolution proof of concept. There it was. And it was really fortunate, because when you put an idea out in the world, it starts to snowball. It starts to get momentum and build critical mass till it gets up above, the water and your head's out of the water and you're on the radar.
Right.
That's what happened. So, yeah. And it's only, I think, because there was a kernel of validity and great creativity to what we were doing that it was able to poke through all the, mainstream commercial crap that was going on then. And it's fortunate.
And here you are, early 20s, pioneering something that was very controversial. You had your segments, if you will, of doing some pranks and antics on the campus and being that rogue bunch of students trying to make a point, a platform.
Yeah.
Not understanding what the ramifications, the potential ramifications of building not just a career of wealth or fame or touring and being popular on Australian TV, late night TV or radio, and touring Japan and making it. I don't think that was really the focus at the beginning, was it?
No. I mean, when you're young and you're strident and you're idealistic, you certainly don't think about your own survival or what might be the safest thing for you to do, to ingratiate yourself to the community. You just go for it. I mean, any artist worth their salt goes for it. And sometimes they hit the bullseye. And I think that's what happened. It started when I was in my early 20s, but by the time Devo was accepted, I was 29.
Yes.
So it was a long gestation where nobody knew about us, and we were in Akron and invisible. And when we finally got up on the radar nationally, people just thought we had popped up overnight, and that, we had done nothing except act weird and foolish. And nothing could be further from the truth. This had been like 4 or 5 year gestation period of garages and basements and apartments and talking and getting laughed at and trying to play live and getting beer cans thrown at you and people either feeling sorry for you or hating you. And, it doesn't just happen magically. It takes a lot of effort. People don't see the work. They just see you for that moment on stage or in a 3-minute video, and they think, oh, these guys are getting money for being weird. You know, it's sad because it all gets trivialized so fast.
I think your industry of your generation gave you that humble beginnings of understanding and appreciating what that hard work was like, because record deals and cutting music is so different today. Well, there aren't any record deals per se. There's no radio support. There's not the conventional way of making it in this industry, 50 years later. So you grew up in a generation of a genre of music of which I guess you could say was to your benefit.
Maybe. I mean, you adapt to the system you're in, and that system we were in, yes, you were correct, it's gone. And, people demonize it now, and, it's easy to do in retrospect, but here are some good things about it. There were organized channels by which new artists would proceed through the rungs and get up to a point where the public knew about them. And if you were good at what you did, you were not left behind. Like, the cream did rise to the top.
Yes.
And record labels, as onerous as their deals were, they were giving artists a lot of money to be able to live life and produce art. They didn't need a day job anymore. They were being funded. And records made money. It's upside down now. Records don't make money. They become promotional purely only, except if you're Drake or Beyonce. And just like the music business made music videos, turned an art form into a meaningless promotion throwaway with the help of MTV, so now are records. And so record companies really don't do anything except act like ad companies, but they're not as good as ad firms. I would advise any artist today to just, use the internet, use YouTube, use TikTok, and make a deal with an ad company.
Right.
Don't even mess around with a record company that is like a kind of compromised grade C level ad company, because they're not really giving you money. They're signing you to a, quote, 360 deal where they're in on your touring, they're in on your merchandise. It's like an octopus with their hands in every revenue source, because they're no longer giving you money for records that make no money. So we had the opposite. That world is upside down compared to the world we were in. And there were horrible things about it, but it certainly allowed us to be Devo.
And that greasy underbelly of the beast, if you will, that you experienced doing those clubs, working for nothing, before that Warner Brothers break, but even then, after the Warner Brother break, it was pushing that boulder up a mountain, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sure.
The cast of the band, the logistics, the writing, the marketing. There's a lot of moving parts.
Oh, yeah. And it was very stressful and very corrupt, very duplicitous. And the only thrill you got as an artist was that hour and a half on stage when, 6,000, 10,000, 20,000 people are going nuts.
Yes.
And you feel really good about what you've done.
Yes.
And that they're responding to what you've done. Any artist that says they don't care whether people like their stuff is lying.
Yes.
They wouldn't be so presumptuous to get up on stage and say, look at me, if they didn't care.
That's right.
And who knows why people do that. I still, after all this time, I'm not sure why I felt compelled to have to do this, except that I really felt I had to express these ideas to people. I really had something to say that I thought mattered. And that is egotistical on some level. But if it's true, then, you're not a chump. You're not an idiot.
What's the old saying? It's not bragging if you've done it.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and remember, again, when we're talking about a system that's dead, people had to be able to sing and play to get as far as Devo did.
Yes.
You don't have to do any of that now.
Not with backing tracks and samples and,
Just producer does some beats.
That's right.
They take pieces of your vocal and put it together, and they are the artist.
In someone's living room.
Yeah, and you're just the front person.
Yes.
You got to, if you're a cute girl or a sexy guy on TikTok.
Right. And I want to bring attention or spotlight to your platform, and not to take away from the other members, past, current, present, of the band. We're here talking about you today, and I know that you've given a lot of praise to the rest of the group, because without the rest of the group, there wouldn't be a Devo.
That's right.
But you do take credit without being, I guess you could say, conceited or arrogant, that you were the lyricist of the band for the most part, correct?
I think if you added it up, because it was a true art collective and a collaboration that, fed me and energized me, and that I respected deeply, and was very, crushed when it stopped being a collective. But if you would look at the song credits, like nobody even bothers to do that, what you'd see is that, okay, music, Mark's probably 60-40 to my 40. Lyrics, I'm 60 to his 40.
Yes.
But it was a great balance.
Yes.
And all the best songs, all the Devo songs that I love are co-written. So, I'm glad that went on as long as it did.
Yes. And one of the covers that really populated your fame was being on Saturday Night Live and covering the Stones.
Right.
Satisfaction.
Right.
I'm sure that was that was 1978.
Yeah, we actually covered the song and recorded a version that we put out on Boogie Boy Records, our private label, in '77. But then the world heard it when we did the new version for Warner Brothers Records in February of '78, when we did the record in Germany with Brian Eno, engineered by Connie Plank. And we played that version live on Saturday Night Live in October of '78, the week after the Stones came on.
Right.
And we did that on purpose because we thought Satisfaction was one of the greatest rock and roll songs ever written. And we had the nerve, the temerity to cover it. And we thought that our cover was so original and so twisted that it was once again like a case in point of when people go, what's De-Evolution all about? I mean, these raps, but what's it got to do with the band? It's like, here, this song is a devolved version of Satisfaction. So here's your picture on the wall for comparison. Here it is. And it went very far in answering people's questions if they had a sincere question, right?
Yes.
Music critics, people that are philosophically oriented, fans, they got it. It was easy to understand. It's like, here's a known quantity. Here's an iconic song that'll never be beat for rock and roll. We had the nerve to cover it. And most people that cover songs, it sounds like they shouldn't have done it because they just do another version of exactly what you heard, but it's not as good as the group who did it first. We completely, what's the word? We deconstructed it.
Yes.
We didn't even have that word when we did it. Deconstruction was part of this postmodernist philosophy, another word that came about a few years later after Devo was doing it. And that's what I would say we did. We deconstructed it.
Yes. With a lot of flair, a lot of spice.
Yeah, a lot of nerve.
Are You Experienced was another cover that got a lot of popularity the Jimi Hendrix song. Everyone
Yeah.
that is a Hendrix follower or a, if you will, aficionado of. And these songs that you and the band did cover, they meant something.
Yes.
It wasn't just a fluke.
No.
We're going to pick a song and that's what we're going to do.
No.
Yeah.
No, there was no cover we ever did that was like that. Devo always was very purposeful. I mean, working in a coal mine.
Yes.
That was something that Bob Mothersbaugh and I were big fans of R&B, much more than Mark. We thrived on it, and growing up in Ohio, you could tune into a Detroit station any night,
Sure.
AM, and just listen to all the greatest R&B, and then Motown. hit. And I just couldn't get enough of it. But Lee Dorsey, early on, was working in a coal mine. It just dug itself into my subconscious, and Bob Mothersbaugh too. And we were talking about that one day, and we said, well, let's cover it, But what would Devo do to that song? And of course, once we got Mark into it,
Magic. Yeah, and the video's magic.
Oh yeah.
The video's magic. Yeah. For any of you that are following along with the scorecard, a lot of this content is going to be found on Club Devo or on YouTube, or you can Google it.
Yeah.
The truth about de-evolution is remarkable. It shows a lot of segments and if you will, B-roll of what Devo was before it was Devo, really.
Correct. Proto Devo.
Yes. So I challenge everybody to tune in to either YouTube or just look for the short film. It's about 10 minutes.
Yeah, and it includes a cover of Secret Agent Man,
Right.
Johnny Rivers, and that was Mark's idea. And we mutated that one really well.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Fast forwarding into the 80s, there was roster changes. There was a hiatus period back and forth a little bit. And then things started to come back together for the band.
Well, actually, there was, after the album, we put out 2 albums on Enigma Records, Total Devo and Smooth Noodle Maps. And Smooth Noodle Maps, I think, came out in 1990. And then Devo was essentially, a bear in hibernation.
Yes.
It was put on ice. Mark wasn't interested in doing anything Devo. So for 10 years, Devo really did nothing except some smattering of live gigs, like the closing ceremony of the Sundance Festival in 1996.
Yes.
Things like that. A couple appearances at Lollapalooza. And then in 2010, people had been coming to us for a year and a half going, please put out another record, because they heard our song that we did for Dell Computers called Watch Us Work It,
Right.
which came about because my good friend Paul Malmstrom, who ran an agency in New York, which was the coolest agency, Mother. I had worked for him when he was at Fallon McElligott in Minneapolis, and I had directed like 12 commercials. He was a creative director there. And so he came and originally wanted Whip It, but he wanted another recording with parody lyrics. And I said, well, why don't we, it's been used a lot. Swiffer used it. Why don't we make a new song? And he goes, well, let me talk to Dell. And he single-handedly talked the head of Dell into letting Devo write a new song just for that commercial. And people loved that song, and they heard it all over the Super Bowl.
Of course.
And so Mark finally acquiesced because so many people loved that, and so many people wanted to hear a new Devo album that we wrote one starting in 2009 and finished it in 2010 and put it out. And of course, by that time, record companies were at their nadir, at the bottom of the swamp, and did nothing. Warner's failed to bring it to market. They did nothing. The head of A&R there came to us and said, hey, would you mind if I took that song, No Place Like Home, because I really like that song. Do you mind if I try to walk that over to radio? And we were just like speechless. It's like, wait a minute, this is the head of A&R. Why would we mind if some song that we put on that record would be walked to radio? That's what we were like hoping for, praying for, right? That somehow in the modern landscape that was permeated by, once again, absolute dreck, that somehow they could get a Devo song on the radio. And so I knew we were dead in the water when he was being deferential and asking permission, and he's the head of A&R. And of course, nothing happened.
Who probably wasn't old enough to remember the original versions and bits of Devo coming out to begin with.
Probably not.
Yeah. Amazing how that ballpark has changed.
Oh, it's amazing.
You
It's
know.
truly amazing.
And so here you are, almost 50 years into the game,
Yeah.
and you're still playing. You're still touring. You're still doing shows.
Well, yeah, in a nominal way. I mean, in 2015, after my brother Bob's death, we played maybe 8 concerts where we called the Hardcore Devo, which was luckily recorded
Yes.
on videotape too, where we played all the early basement tape songs that we wrote in 74, 75, 76. Then in 2018, we played Burger Boogaloo for John Waters, one concert. And then in 2019, one concert, Desert Days, in Inland Empire, south of Palm Springs.
Right.
And now, 2 years later, 4 shows in 2021. That's not up to snuff. That's not enough. That's not working. That's not being active. But it's better than nothing.
Do you foresee when the dust settles and we get past live music on this roller coaster that the Devo will do more in the future? Do you think you'll have some more material coming out? Is that a possibility?
Well, I would never like to predict that it isn't a possibility, but it seems unrealistic. But
Yes.
what would be great, and what I would love to do, is make good on the promise that we're all Devo, and all the raps that I could direct you towards, both on camera and in print, where we said Devo was a concept from the beginning, which it was. The Devo was like Blue Man Group, and you could have more than one Devo out there. I would like to, talk Mark into writing Devo songs, and we get 5 guys that are as great of a performers as we were when we were 30 and totally are into it. And then I stage them, I choreograph them, and they do Devo. But they're going to do Devo better than we could do Devo.
It's a great concept. That's a great concept.
I know. I wish it would happen.
And you've had your hand for quite some time directing music videos.
Right.
And not for any small fry local, indie groups. We're talking Rush,
Yeah.
talking some serious groups here.
Yeah, sure. Soundgarden, Silverchair, Foo Fighters. There were so many groups I did. Almost all of them are broken up now. I've probably directed, between the Devo videos that I directed and other bands, I've directed about 60 music videos and about 80 television commercials.
That's a lot of work.
I wish there was even more. And of course, I kept trying to do a feature over and over and over.
Yes.
And always just getting left at the altar there. And I've written a musical for Devo, but haven't gotten anywhere with that either.
That's a lot of hard yards, a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
For someone that grew up with a vision and didn't let that vision go. You didn't quit.
No, I
You
mean,
never quit.
no. Believe me, what you see of Devo was the tip of the iceberg compared to the ideas that were there.
Yes.
And it was for lack of opportunity that these ideas didn't happen.
For the sake of the new music that you would possibly put out through, I guess you could say, surrogates, a surrogate Devo group, or proxy. Do you have anyone in particular that you would tap on the shoulder, or would you be someone completely unknown, anonymous?
Yeah, these would be new kids.
Yeah.
These would be new.
Yeah. That would be incredible.
I mean, a few years ago, when Mark refused to tour, I was trying to get interest from promoters in Devo going out with Janelle Monáe as the lead singer. So we'd do Devo songs, and she could work with us to re-engineer them with beats that she wants to sing to and keys that she can sing in, and let it mutate and see what would happen.
Yes.
But it couldn't get enough, fuel to that fire.
I see.
And, so that's why recently in the spirit of collaboration, I went to my alter ego, Jihad Jerry, and worked with Josh Freese, who I love Josh Freese so much. And we did I'm Gonna Pay You Back. And then I went to my good friend Davey Force, who's a brilliant original CGI artist that's been working with AI programs and deep learning, and made a video to I'm Gonna Pay You Back. And it's gotten tremendous response from those who see it. The trick is getting eyeballs on it when the main gatekeepers ignore you. But I mean, I'm up to about 200,000 views, and I have a 97% positive thumbs up on the song and video. And it looks like nothing else. So it's in the spirit of Devo. We were cutting edge, we were confrontational, we were original. People didn't expect Devo to come out and look like another band or sound like another band. That would have been failure. And so at least I can say, for better or worse, I'm Gonna Pay You Back sounds original and looks totally original.
Yes.
So I'm happy there.
Yeah, I've viewed that video several times, and the reiteration of your caricature, if you will, through that AI, it's pretty. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Guy Ritchie movie.
Yeah.
Something from Snatch or Reservoir Dogs.
Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I love it. I love it because I've created something I always wanted to create, and I couldn't have done it without Davey, which is this kind of reality that's kind of timeless. So it's like in the Marvel comic universe, so that G.I. Jerry can come back and have more adventures in that world, and you don't watch that and go, oh, that's 2021. No.
It's timeless.
You'll never see any other video like that until they start all imitating it.
No, that's very cutting edge. I've enjoyed watching that a few times as I've enjoyed your music over the years.
I hope it made you laugh.
It did.
Okay.
It did, because the persona, the character that you slipped
ridiculous.
into. Yes. No, it's very hardcore with a sense of humor to it. Yes.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the next phase of your life, something I know that you have a passion for, because growing up in Ohio, moving to Hollywood, if you will, for the industry, to cut your teeth in the music industry, you discovered fine food.
Yep.
You became a food snob, if you will.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's snob. It's just life's too short for one bad meal.
Yes.
And I grew up eating bad meals.
Yes.
I mean, I grew up blue collar in Ohio, and I had the same experience as tens of thousands of kids. Canned vegetables, macaroni and cheese, hot dogs, burned to a crisp pot roast, terrible stuff, instant mashed potatoes. And you didn't know what real food could be, or fresh food could be, or just simple vegetables grilled or roasted. And so when I came to California, and there was a food revolution going on in restaurants, using fresh ingredients and not messing them up, and no cans and no big sauces on anything, it was a revelation. It was just mind-blowing.
Yes.
And the chefs were the same age as the Devo members, and they weren't famous and rich yet. And they loved the fact that I loved this food, and they loved Devo. So they'd go, here, taste this wine. When you eat that piece of fish, drink this with it. You try it, and you go, oh my God. So if you pair this wine with this fish, now you got this whole other level. It's a 3-stage rocket, your meal, right?
Yes.
And believe me, it didn't cost much more than eating shit. at the time. I mean, the problem is, like anything in capitalism, they figured out, oh, if people want to eat healthy, we can make them pay.
Right.
And so there's all these food deserts and all these people that have to eat terrible food, which impacts their health and their longevity. It's really wrong. It's really sad, because we don't come from a European tradition where everybody had little gardens in their community.
Right.
And, you went to the local market and things didn't cost a lot.
Farm to table.
Yeah, for
Yes.
real.
Yes.
Now they call it farm to table, but that's owned by a big corporation.
Right.
In fact, the name is.
Right.
So it's just all sad. And so, yes, I proceeded from just being a consumer who was now being educated to a collector of wine and learning how to cook, to then a person who wanted to make wine, because the more winemakers I met and the more vineyards I visited, the more I realized these guys are artists and this life is incredible. It's part farming, part art. They're never more than an hour out of the city, so it's town and country, and it's so cool. And you're part of the earth. And each harvest is different, and you're turning these grapes into wine. And so I finally got that chance because I have a good friend who's a restoration architect, and he's the one that built the 50 by 50 house that's still unfinished. And he's wildly successful, so he funded me so I could start making wine. Because to make wine is expensive.
Yes.
So I've made wine now for 8 years. My 9th vintage is coming out, and I'm getting pretty good at it. And I work with enologist Eric Lyman.
Yes.
And I make the wine over in a barn on the Silverado Trail at Judd's Hill Estate. And yeah, it gives me something where it's up to me, and I'm not having to ask permission, and I'm not having to wait for a record company or Mark Mothersbaugh to say yes. And it gives me something creative to do, because it's as creative in its own way as music.
I was just going to say that's your surrogate music
Yes,
production.
It is. Yes, it is.
And I will say, not because you're sitting next to me, we had the opportunity to have a drop or two before we shot this piece.
Yeah.
And it was very, very good body, but not overwhelming.
Yep.
Yep. And we could probably drink a couple bottles in a few hours easily.
It would be easy to drink that rosé all day.
That's right. That's right.
It's balanced. It's what I call the Goldilocks area, where it's not too sweet, not too dry,
Right.
not too big, not too thin, and it's balanced between the fruit and the acid, and it's just pleasant. You shouldn't even think about rosé or talk about it other than to go, this is good,
Yes.
because that's what rosé is about. It's not like several notes like a big red wine where, yeah, you can have a discussion about that and the aging, the barrel aging and everything
Yes.
that goes with it. So yeah, I make real Pinot Noir, Sonoma Coast Pinot Noir. I make Carneros Rosé Pinot Noir, and I make a white Pinot Noir now, which is very rare, and I was taught all the tricks of the trade, or at least some of them, by a great winemaker who made wine at Domaine Serene in Oregon, Willamette Valley, for like 15 years. His name is Tony Reidners, and he makes a white Pinot Noir called the Pretender, and it blew me away when I tasted it. And I really bugged him with questions about it. And he was so nice. He didn't have to be nice at all. And he said, well, even if I tell you this stuff, it's like a chef telling you, well, here's the recipe, but it's not going to turn out like mine.
Yes.
And I went, I know, but thanks. So I'm on the curve.
That's the anti-evolution, if you will. Because
Yeah.
here, full circle, if you will, maybe you're not producing and manifesting music today, but you're manifesting something else with that artistic ability that's
Right.
embedded in your DNA.
Right.
But also the human kindness and the connection of why this is happening today isn't because of me. It's because of this man's kindness and generosity. Without pumping sunshine off of his back, there is a bigger picture than someone that happen to make it in the music industry or happen to have fame, fortune, or otherwise because they had a hit song or hit songs or made it on MTV. This man pioneered MTV, folks. Do some research, do some digging. This man was part of the infrastructure besides the very first song.
We had 4 videos in the can before MTV existed.
What does that tell you? It was August 1st, 1981 that MTV aired
That's right.
Video Killed the Radio Star.
That's right.
50. Can you believe that?
I know, and we already had 4 music videos, and we didn't call them that. We were making art films.
Right.
But we had 4 of them finished. And that's why MTV came to us. The heads of MTV, John Sykes and Bob Pittman, they flew out to LA, and they really put on a full court press saying, hey, we can't pay you guys anything. They could, but they weren't gonna. But it's going to be great. We're going to show your videos all day long, and we're going to make you superstars. And in the beginning, they did show us all day long because they had no other content, no other programming. They had Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. They had Ashes to Ashes, directed by not David Mamet, what's his name? Oh, God. One of the best video directors ever out of England that did the video for David Bowie.
Yes.
And they had like a couple live Rod Stewart things that were terrible.
Pat Benatar.
Well, that came after.
Yes.
Yeah, so they started playing us. But that lasted about maybe 6 months, and then they turned their backs on Devo, because what they did, they came up with a whole new business model once they got the funding from Amex, and they went national franchise. They tied their playlist to the top 40 FM Parallel 1 station playlists. And so it didn't matter how good or bad a video was, as long as that song was being played in heavy rotation. So if Devo wasn't being played in heavy rotation, how good our videos were didn't matter.
No.
They weren't putting them on except maybe at midnight.
Right.
So we just went, wait, what happened to that rap, guys, where you looked at us like we were the harbingers of a new art form? It's like, quickly, boom. Art form? No, man. It's promo. And it turned around 180 degrees quickly.
That was the Fat Cats with the cigars, the marketing money of the Madness Monster.
Yeah, they didn't even smoke cigars anymore.
Yeah.
That would have been more interesting.
Yes. Yes. But that shows a dynamic of where you came from, that vision. And I speak about you and the entire band, pioneering something that most people my age, in my 50s, that was our music growing up. Grade school, junior high, high school. You had to live probably in another universe not to know about Devo.
Yeah, our fans were about anywhere from 8 to 15 years younger than us from the beginning. And now what's funny is because of digital reality, because of the internet, like Generation X and whatever these people are called now, millennials, it's all silly. They've discovered us and they're into it. They're looking at something that they weren't even alive for, and it's intriguing them, just like vinyl intrigues them.
Have you tried to find some of your vinyl out there? It's amazing. It's amazing people are gobbling that up.
Yeah, and vinyl does sound good.
It does. That warmth, the crackle,
yeah, so
the analog feel
fantastic.
Of touching that sample.
And the sound systems people would buy for their turntables produced a full range of sound that didn't fatigue the ear. It felt good.
Because it wasn't sterile, it wasn't acid.
Right, it wasn't all up here like slashing, shredding.
Right. No, it's amazing, and it's amazing that you're working with some people now. As you mentioned, Josh, he's been on with the band since the mid-90s, since 96.
When he was a teenager.
Yes, and that man's been around the block playing for a few gigs, hasn't he?
He's like the Zelig of rock and roll.
Yes.
Because I wouldn't call him a session player, because that's an insult. Because session players, what they do is they just have their one style and they just put it on every record.
That's right.
This guy transforms his identity
Into anything.
into who he's with.
Right.
So when he played with Nine Inch Nails, it's Nine Inch Nails.
Yes.
When he plays with the Vandals, that he was his first band, he's Punko,
Yeah.
right? When he plays with Devo, he's Alan Myers.
Yes.
You know, it's
Yes.
and that's saying something.
That's
because
saying a
nobody
lot.
can be Alan Myers.
Yeah, that was a huge loss.
Huge loss.
A very, very big loss. No, it's interesting, and I touch upon this because that was the reason why this conversation, this interview, this snippet of the man behind not just being a left-handed bass player, lyricist, music director, producer, video director, videographer. He wears many hats, but probably the biggest hat that I wanted to bring to the attention of the viewers, whoever's listening, maybe it's a fan of Devo, maybe it's a fan of Mr. Casale. Maybe you look back at the onion layer, peel back something that means something not only to me, but something that is important right now in 2021. And we don't really get into politics or religion on the show. This is important to speak about, though, because this is what the catalyst and platform was for this man and the rest of the band for Devo. But I want you folks, before we close out this piece today, look and smell and feel a kind and generous person. And that goes a long ways. It would be really nice, without sounding naive or roasting marshmallows around the campfire, singing Kumbaya, that someone of this stature, nature, his success, this is just who he is. And I want to say thank you for that, because a lot of people, it does change them. They're untouchable. They don't have time. Are you kidding me? You really answer an email or phone call? It's well beneath me. And that's not the case. And I'm asking you to do some research and digging, not just with his own label for the wine or with Jihad Jerry that he's done in the past or what he's done with Devo, but maybe just spend a minute or two looking at who Gerald Casale is. It's a remarkable journey, a journey that wasn't handed to him. He didn't have rich parents that bought a record deal or gave him a silver spoon to go tour the world. He didn't have his friend in the industry that said, "Hey, yeah, we'll slap 50 records up and get you going." You know,
They couldn't even buy me a guitar.
That's right. You know, so this shows what this man's gone through and where he's at, and it means something to me to express that today. Whether it means anything to you folks will be up to you. But I want to say thank you, Gerald, for doing this today. It's a remarkable and respected journey that you've carved, not just for yourself, but for the fans. And it's a yin yang, because without the fans,
Well, right.
there wouldn't have been a Devo.
No, fans matter big time.
You know,
Yeah.
and I know that out of the interviews and the stories that you've done, talking about schlepping of the gear and doing these gigs and just being strewn out all over the place, all over the world, just so you could meet and be with those fans. You know, it's remarkable. It's incredible. And so I want to take a little bit of time and put some spotlight on that. And your achievements, the biggest one is being a very good and kind man. I know that is
Well,
a generous compliment, but it's well meant.
most of the time, I think I live up to that.
Yeah.
I will be back in Ohio at the Devotional in November, the annual fan convention, and the 5K run a day later in Akron, the Devo-sponsored run.
Yes.
It's a charity for music school. And yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. And I'm going to do a tasting of the 50 by 50 wine at the Sheraton in Cuyahoga Falls. They were really nice enough to invite me because of the accolades that the Akron Beacon Journal wine critic gave me, Phil Mastaro.
Yes.
And so that ought to be interesting. So if anybody wants to see what I'm doing there, they go to the 50by50.com, all letters.
And because of shipping regulations and whatnot, where can people pick up the 50 by 50?
I can sell direct to anybody in like 38 states.
Yes.
And so most of the states that we're talking about with Devo fans, I can do.
Sure.
And then, the other problem is America's so twisted with their law system about alcohol. To put it in stores anywhere outside of California, you have to make a distribution deal state by state by state.
Yes.
And it's very difficult and very full of, twists and turns and gullies and troughs.
Yes.
And then the distributors mark it up so far that your wine costs twice as much as it does in California.
Right.
So it's better just to order it direct.
I see. And that's 50by50.com.
That's it.
Yeah, very good. Folks,
All right.
you've spent some time today on the patio with Gerald Casale from Devo, but also from a generation that cared about his music, his vision, along with his bandmates, and still does. Thank you for joining us today, kids. This is On the Patio. Gerald Casale, thank you very much.
Thank you.